Good morning, everybody. I am Jenna Polk, and happy Monday. Welcome to Wake Up with YPN. Today, we are diving into the world of rental properties, including permits, processes, and short-term rentals such as Airbnbs or bed and breakfasts. Joining us today is Stan Laverman, Iowa City's Senior Housing Inspector. So if you guys have any questions as we go along, make sure to pop them in the chat and we will get them answered. So good morning, Stan. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Do you want to go ahead and kind of introduce yourself and talk about what it is that you do?
Sure. So I'm Stan Laverman. I'm the Senior Housing Inspector for the City of Iowa City. I've been employed by Iowa City for over 19 years, and I've been Senior Housing Inspector for a little over 12 years at this point. My job duties are surrounded by rental housing, housing inspection, dealing with nuisance complaints related to tall grass and weeds, snow on the sidewalks, cars parked on the grass. And then a few years ago, actually 6 years ago, we combined with our planning department. And at that time, I started overseeing things like the university program, where the city has been buying former rental properties and converting them to owner-occupied. And currently, we're in the South District in the Taylor Davis neighborhood, where we're purchasing multiple duplexes and converting them to owner-occupied. 19 years at the city. It's funny, I started out as an intern, and then one of my first positions was working in finance, where if your water was shut off or your car was towed, you got to come talk to me. So I've been dealing with super happy people my entire career here at Iowa City. So at this point, there's not much that can shock me. So that's me.
Well, thank you. So to just jump right in, if someone owned a property and was interested in turning it into a rental property, what would the process be in doing that?
Sure. I think that key is if someone owned the property, that's the first start and the first step. You do have to own the property to acquire a rental permit for the property. And I know that when investors are out looking for properties, there's times where they would prefer to have that rental permit in place. That's something that the current owner would have to work through and get that process started. There's situations where they could make the realtor or the agent, the listing agent, the agent for the rental permit, but it's important that the ownership of the property is the one that's pulling the rental permit. All of our process is online now, which it's brand new, not brand new. It's a little over a year and a half old now. It's still a new process, though, when you replace software that's been in place for over 30 years to a brand new system. So there's a learning curve with it. We're aware of that. We have cheat sheets for people to follow along to get through the process. It starts by going to the Iowa City Citizen Self-Service page. So if you search for Iowa City CSS, it's where you find how to apply for all your building permits, your business licenses. It also gives you access to all of our public records when it comes to building permits and business licenses. Trying to change how we refer to things as well, because rental permits in themselves don't exist anymore. It's not under the permit category. It's now a business license or a rental license. So if you're looking to see if a property has a rental license, it's not under permits. You have to look under business licenses. So we're still learning that new terminology ourselves. So that can trip you up there. The new system, yes, it's all online. So you would create an account on CSS, and then you would apply for a business license for that property. The safest bet is to reach out to us, either myself or Sue Dunlap, and I can give phone numbers if that helps. Sue can be reached at 319-356-5130, or I can be reached at 319-356-5135. And we're more than happy to look and verify that the property doesn't have a rental permit, and then get you the cheat sheet on how to get through the application process. We do ask for a little bit more information now than we have in the past. We do ask for a site plan of the property you're looking to get a rental permit for. And we also ask for rudimentary floor plans for the property. And the idea is we want whoever is applying for that permit to be comfortable and have a knowledge of what is allowed there and what the rooms are used for, because some of that has changed in the past few years as some of our rules have changed. 2018, the state changed how we regulate occupancy, and in turn, the city changed how they look at some of that, what is allowed in a rental permit. It's a lot less restrictive, but there's more detail required to prove that you can get the occupancy that you want in those properties. So first step is, yes, verify that you have ownership. Make sure it doesn't have a rental permit. If it does have a rental permit, it's fairly easy. We just change the contact information on the rental permit and it transfers to the new owner, because we license properties. We don't license people or companies.
Okay.
So cost-wise, a typical 3-bedroom, you're looking at a first-time fee of $220 to $240. That's a rough estimate there. Definitely not more than that. If the property only has 3 bedrooms, it's inspected every 2 years. If it has over 4 or more bedrooms, it's inspected every year, and that fee would be for a yearly fee.
Okay.
The process can take a couple weeks to, if you're having difficulty getting the information around, or if it's a super busy time of year, it can take up to 4 weeks. If it's part of a sale, we're willing to work with people to make sure that we can get that in place, so it's not holding anybody up.
Okay. What are some of the restrictions or limitations in turning a property into a rental?
Sure. So with the change in the state code in 2018, prior to 2018, we regulated occupancy based off of familial status. And in essence, so it was a family plus one a family plus one roomer. And that kind of limited our occupancies in Iowa City to about a household occupancy of 3. There was a change, and that's fine. One of the things that we were worried about is we didn't want to see de facto rooming houses packed into Iowa City where every room was turned into a bedroom and there wasn't any shared common space in these houses. So some of the restrictions and limitations is that you can only have 35% of your floor area designated for bedrooms. So you can't turn every living room, dining room, basement rec room into a bedroom to cram as many people as you want in there. Yeah. The idea is you want these places to function as a household, and you want to have livable space that people can share. We also require outdoor living space, that you have to have a minimum of 500 square feet in the rear yard for outdoor recreation area. Also in new rentals, where you can park is limited. You can't pave your entire backyard to increase your occupancy. Obviously, there's always grandfather situations where garages have been built and you have driveways leading up to those garages, and we work through those on a case-by-case basis. But that's the biggest limiting factor, parking and the fact that you can't convert every room into a bedroom in the property.
That's probably a good restriction.
Probably.
So what are the requirements in terms of, you touched on it a little bit earlier, but bedroom requirements and then also safety requirements?
Sure. I guess another one, that as you add bedrooms, new bedrooms have to be a minimum size of 100 square feet. And the idea is, again, that yes, you can only have 35% of that dwelling as bedrooms, but you can't create a series of 7 by 10 bedrooms to meet that requirement either. So safety-wise, in a new rental, we're requiring all smoke alarms to be interconnected. Smoke alarms in all bedrooms. That's a fairly common change that we've seen. We're also requiring radon tests for any rental property in Iowa City. Any single-family duplex rental property in Iowa City. So that's something that as you bring a new single-family or duplex onto the rental rolls, that you would be required to have it radon tested.
Okay. How are rental permits enforced?
I am fortunate that I have a staff of 10 people that assist with this. We have 5 designated rental inspectors that conduct the systematic rental inspections and the new rental inspections. And then we also have support staff that look through complaints also to see where we're getting complaints and verifying that those properties have rental permits. Again, we also have a mobile app that people have been very comfortable with. If there's a property in their neighborhood that appears to be rental and they don't think it has a rental permit, a lot of times neighbors are bringing that to our attention, that there's something different, and they ask us to check it out. So it's a combination of systematic rental inspections and then also responding to complaints from neighbors.
Okay, so you mentioned you have a mobile app. Is that something that anybody can download?
It is, yep. So if you go to the city website at icgov.org, in the top bar, there's a report a concern button. So you can complain right there on the web. But there's also links to the mobile app, which I affectionately call the Tattletale app. So it's called ICGov Express, and it's probably one of the easiest ways if you have concerns about what's going on, everything from potholes to snow on sidewalks to barking dogs. If you put the complaint through there, it gets directed to the appropriate city department, and it provides a lot of accountability for city staff and also for the people that are bringing these complaints, that it's going to get addressed, because we have to follow through on these and we have to provide the documentation for it. A lot of people are very comfortable calling me and giving me complaints, and then it goes into my notebook, and then I have to get it into the system, and it's probably going to get delayed a little bit. But if you put it in through the mobile and the technology that we provided, you're going to get the best response.
Okay. So kind of pivoting a little bit from those traditional rental properties, what is the main difference between a traditional property and a short-term rental?
Sure. So short-term rental is anything under 30 days. So at the point that you have guests that are staying for longer than 30 days, it's not a short-term rental.
Okay. In terms of the license for that, does that look any different than that of a traditional?
Yep. Again, the state legislature came in over cities, and this was 2 years ago, and have said that anywhere that cities allow residential property, that we have to allow short-term rental, that we can't require extra fees for permits, and we can't put additional restrictions on those properties. So, for example, where Coralville had the rule that you had to be present, or the owner had to be present and at the property during the rental, a restriction like that is not permitted. So short-term stay for residential properties is wide open in the state of Iowa at this point. And Iowa City had the rule that it used to be that you had to be a single family or a duplex owner occupied. That's not the case anymore. So it could be single family duplex. It can be in multifamily. Anywhere that you have residential property, the city can't restrict it. Homeowners associations can restrict it. Multifamily ownership, they can restrict it, but the cities can't restrict it.
Okay. And then licensing for that business license or rental license,
right?
What does that process look like for
it looks a lot like a rental license, except it's not a rental license, but we are verifying that the property is in compliance with the housing code. There are no fees associated with it, but we do an inspection and verify where people can park and that the main structure is habitable and you're not in a situation where there's illegal bedrooms or areas that would not meet habitability standards that people are trying to rent out as habitable space.
Okay. With rental permits or the rental license being enforced, is there any oversight like that in terms of short-term rentals?
Same thing. I'm not going to say we spend a lot of time on it, but the same apps that people list those properties for rent on, we have access to as well. So we spend a little time every once in a while going through those and verifying who's trying to take advantage of that. And Our first course of action is we're trying to educate and we're trying to provide safe housing, if that be short term or for rental. So our first approach is education. If it's someone who habitually offends those rules, we will seek civil citations. But initially, we're looking to educate and provide, a method for people to come into compliance.
Okay. Once a property is allowed to be a rental property, what does the renewal process look like?
Sure. In a perfect world, we have everybody's contact information, and our system works perfectly. And a couple of months before that rental permit expires, you receive an email that says, "Hey, heads up! In a couple of months, your rental permit's going to expire. Make sure everything is up to date. You have your contact information." And for the most part, that works fine. We've had a situation as we've transitioned to new software where we didn't have correct email addresses, and we had a glitch in our system that it wasn't sending out renewals for certain properties. I think we've got that figured out now. So it's pretty automatic at this point when everything is done right, and we have an email address for the agent for the property or the owner if they're managing it themselves. And then an invoice is sent out, an inspection time is set up, and it's all of those records are available through the portal on the citizen self-service. As long as people have their dashboard set up, they can see what their upcoming inspections are. The results of those inspections are there if they're having someone else meet us there. But it's very important that people provide that email address and set themselves up with an account on CSS so that functions properly. One of the issues that we're having is we've got some people who are a little older and who are a little resistant to technology, who somehow have managed to live off the grid to this point, who don't want to even use a computer, who don't want to use an email address. And it is going to be part of a requirement to have a rental permit and to go through this process that you have an email address or an agent that has an email address that can help you through that process. We're going paperless. That's the thing. And I know that's hard for some people to accept, but it's a lot easier and a lot more efficient on our end to conduct business that way.
Okay, we have a question. What are some rules that are commonly misunderstood or broken regarding rental licenses?
Yeah, good question. So from a real estate standpoint, I think one of the biggest rules or misconceptions is that if my kid is living in that property, that it doesn't need a rental permit. And that's not the case. In Iowa City, if you are not on the deed, it is considered rental permit. It's considered a rental property. So that's a big misconception that we see at the onset. We see a lot of families come to Iowa City and purchase properties for their kids while they're in college. And if those kids aren't on the deed, that still requires a rental permit. Additionally, if it can be owner occupied, and if you have more than one roomer, it requires a rental permit. So that's kind of that's one of the most commonly misunderstood rules with rental licenses.
Okay. Excuse me. What are some common violations that you see with rental permits that landlords should be aware of?
Smoke alarms disabled, smoke alarms removed, fire extinguishers that are out of date. That's probably the biggest violation that we see, kind of a real basic safety measure. Other than that, in some of these older homes, everyone is, college kids are industrious, and we find them sleeping in areas that they probably shouldn't, or creating spaces that are less than safe. So yeah, that's probably it.
Okay, and then we have another question. What are the requirements to make a bedroom a bedroom? And they said, for example, a closet.
So in Iowa City, if you have an existing property, the smallest room that you can have that's a bedroom is 10 foot by 7 foot. That's the minimum square footage for a grandfathered bedroom. It doesn't have to have a closet. It does have to have a egress window. So a second means of escape from that bedroom with 5.7 square feet of openable area. It does not have to have a closet under our housing code. As far as how the assessor looks at that, that's a whole different story. But as far as for a rental property and a rental permit, it doesn't have to have a closet. Now, if you're taking an older home and you're creating new bedrooms, the new bedrooms have to be a minimum size of 10 by 10 or 100 square feet. Again, it doesn't have to have a closet.
Okay. Wonderful. So if we don't have any more questions, that's about all I have. So just to give a little recap, best way of getting in contact with you is through the Iowa City CSS portal.
That gives you access to the public records that we have. The best way to get in touch with me is either by calling me or by emailing me, and I'm happy to respond. Much like everyone, I live with that phone in my hand. So if you email me at stan-laverman@iowa-city.org, even on the weekend, there's probably a good chance that I will respond.
Okay.
So an excuse of, well, you weren't reachable is not an excuse to me, because I'm pretty accessible. And I think there's a lot of people out there that will vouch for me that if you have something going on and you're looking to close a deal and it's the weekend, that if you have questions about regulations or what can or cannot be done, that you're able to get a hold of me.
Okay, wonderful. Any last tidbits you'd like to share, or any golden nuggets of information that we might have missed?
I think I'm good there.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much
Yep.
for your time this morning, Stan.
All right.
Okay, have a great week.
Bye-bye.